If you've ever wondered what happens when a senator tries to get real answers from a top law enforcement official and gets nothing but deflection, this is the moment you need to see. Because Senator Welch tried to have a real conversation about health care, voting rights, and the responsibilities of the Justice Department, but every time he asked Pam Bondi a direct question, she deflected. And what unfolds is a perfect example of why accountability matters. Because when leaders avoid facts, it's everyday families who pay the price. Here is a clip.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. I have noticed that at various times when one of my colleagues is pressing you, you come up with something in their background. So I'll be waiting for my turn, but you don't have to do it right now. So let me get to my questions. One of the things that you mentioned, and I agree with this, that it's really tough on the various federal workforce, including our law enforcement folks, who are not getting paid because of the shutdown. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. But I also think that wasn't the whole story. There is an issue here that's going to affect Americans, whether they voted for President Trump or voted for Vice President Harris, and that is the loss of health care, where on November 1st, everyone who is getting Affordable Care Act help to buy insurance is going to get the notice of premium increases. And I got a letter just today from a Vermont family, nuclear family of 5, husband and wife, 54 and 55, with 3 kids. One of whom has acute myeloid leukemia. And the apprehension that they have is that if we don't solve this problem, and November 1 is a urgent date, then their family premiums will triple. It'll be beyond their ability to pay. So I'm assuming that with respect to the threat to health care for families in your state of Florida, in my state of Vermont, you would share that concern and hope that we would resolve that.
Senator Welch, I would be happy to speak with that family too, because there are many nonprofits that help with children with terminal illnesses, and I'm involved in some in Florida. So we would be happy to talk to you about that. As to health care, the government is shut down. It's my understanding, maybe you're not one of them, but because many Democrats want health care for illegal aliens, and that's what shut down the government.
Let me
that's
be clear.
That's one of the sticking points, and I don't know if you voted
for that. All right, well, this actually is important to all of us, and the lament I have is that if this health care goes away, this premium support, it is really going to hurt families in red states and blue states. And in Vermont, I mean, we voted Democratic, but we have a lot of good folks who voted for President Trump, and their health care is jeopardized. And there's a November 1 deadline that is coming up. And the reason I'm saying this is that I think it's important for us to try to work out together a resolution that's going to be beneficial to people you care about in Florida and voted for President Trump, and keep people I care about in Vermont who voted in some cases for Vice President Harris and some for President Trump. So it's not just Democrats not wanting to negotiate. And in fact, we do want to negotiate. And that's why I'd encourage the president to encourage my colleagues on the Republican side to sit down with us and try to see if we can make some progress. Another topic, with the respect to voting rights in the letter that your voting rights chief sent out, we got one in Vermont, and it's a demand to get all the information on the voting file. And in that letter, in the announcement of that letter, the chief indicated an apprehension about the voting process being taken over by, quote, the left. Now, do you have any information with respect to Vermont about a takeover of the voting process by, quote, the left?
Senator, I'm not familiar with what you're referring to. We are currently involved in voter roll lawsuits in 6 states. Is that what you're referring to?
No, there's a letter that went out demanding that states, including Vermont, provide all the voting file information,
right.
Includes personal information. But when that letter was sent out...
That's perfectly legal.
But there was an assertion by the chief in this division that this was to deal with the fact that the voting process has been taken over by the left. So we got one of those letters in Vermont. And my question to you is, what do you mean by the left? And do you have any evidence that the so-called system has been overtaken by the left?
We must have fair and free elections.
No, I know that. But I'm asking for the specific basis.
And we will have fair and free elections in this country. Okay, Senator, I'd be happy to talk to my chief. Who was it? Who said that?
It was your chief, which I assume you would know who that is. Here's the question here, okay? There is a point of view that is in dispute here about the fairness of elections. But you have the power as the as the Attorney General to use the authority of your office to make demands on states. And you did that with Vermont, That's within your right to do it. I'm not disputing your legal authority to do it.
Is Vermont disputing turning over the information to our office?
Vermont is. The Secretary of State is. And you can resolve that with her. But
And we have every right to have that information.
Here's
Senator.
where I'm going.
Why wouldn't they want to turn it
You're
over?
a prosecutor with the awesome authority to make the decision that you're going to start an investigation against the state or against an individual. And I know from your experience as a county prosecutor and as the Attorney General in Florida, you took seriously that obligation to have a factual basis before you'd proceed, right?
Senator, I take that role, I take my oath very seriously.
All right, so what I
and
ask
I
is-
take fair and free elections in
No,
this country
we
very
all-
seriously.
we all
and that
do.
information, our office is entitled to have that information. And we
the
are
question
involved in
here-
litigation on that, and I
Here's the
assume we'll be
question
involved
I
in
have.
litigation with Vermont.
We have a Republican governor in Vermont. We had our former Republican governor was secretary was a treasurer for many years, and also the Secretary of State with election responsibility. What I'm asking is, do you or does your head of this voting section have any factual basis that you can point to that justifies your demand that Vermont turn over all this confidential voting rights information?
Well, it would remain confidential with my office, and you just said that you have a Republican governor, so it doesn't make sense what you just said. We've asked that of every state, Senator.
Right, and I'm asking about Vermont and what the factual basis is, but we can move on. You've mentioned that you can't discuss pending litigation, and I think the committee by and large accepted that answer. But I did notice that you spoke at great length about pending litigation, specifically with respect to the questions Senator Cruz asked you about the sentencing of the Kavanaugh defendant. That's pending, right?
He was sentenced to 8 years.
I understand that, but that's on appeal, right?
We will be appealing.
Right, so that makes it pending litigation. So you made an exception with respect to
No.
the Cruz questions.
Hold on. No,
but you
those
didn't
were
answer any of the
things-
questions that you said were pending litigation from any of my colleagues.
Those were facts that came out at the sentencing hearing. You're welcome to see the transcript of the sentencing
No, I
hearing
understand
with all the
that.
gruesome details of what they threatened to do to Justice
Hey,
Kavanaugh and other justices.
I condemn what that person did.
That was a sentencing.
But the point here is that that's pending litigation. You indicated you're going to be appealing. It's your right to do that. And you would not, you use that justification to not answer many other questions.
Justification, you're an attorney, Senator.
Okay.
You realize that.
I do want to go back to Homan. There's a tape, right, with Mr. Homan? I mean, first of all, is there a tape that has audio and video of the transfer of the $50,000?
You would have to talk to Director Patel about that.
No, I'm talking to you.
I don't know the answer, Senator.
Yet you do know the answer to
Don't
that.
call me a liar.
I didn't call you a liar.
You just said I know the answer. I said I don't know the answer.
Well,
you have to talk
okay,
to
let
Director
me-
Patel. What I said is that
Let me put
investigation
it
was
another way.
closed.
If you don't know, why don't you know whether there was a tape and video?
Senator, I believe that was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General.
Do you think that it is of public interest for the people to know what happened to the $50,000 that the FBI turned over to Homan?
Did you hear what I just said? That was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. That's why I said I would not know.
It's not resolved. There's $50,000. Homan has it, or somebody has it. Do you have no interest in knowing where it is?
You're not going to sit here and slander Tom Homan. The FBI and Deputy Director Blanche said there was nothing.
I'm not slamming Tom Homan. He got the $50,000.
Tom Homan is doing, how do you know that? Tom Homan is doing a great job, as our borders are, keeping your border state safe.
Now stay with me, because what follows isn't just a back and forth. It's a revealing look at how truth can crumble when politics gets in the way. And let me ask you this. What happens to democracy when the people in charge refuse to give straight answers? Peter Welch walks into this hearing with a simple test. Could Attorney General Pam Bondi answer direct questions without dodging, reframing, or attacking motives? What unfolds is a revealing showcase of how clarity breaks down when the person holding power chooses spin over facts. Welch opens with something that hits every American family hard: health care premiums set to triple for those relying on the Affordable Care Act. He reads a heartbreaking letter from a Vermont family with a child fighting acute leukemia, not as a prop, but as a reality check on what government inaction looks like in real life. These are real parents trying to save their child, not characters in a political argument. But instead of acknowledging the urgency, Bondi immediately pivots, redirecting the issue into a partisan talking point about Democrats wanting health care for illegal immigrants. Welch tries again, reminding her this affects families everywhere, no matter their politics, but she keeps dragging the discussion back into the same political trenches. And here's the real question: if leaders can't stay focused on people's lives in a moment like this, what else are they willing to ignore? That pattern repeats when Welch brings up a Department of Justice letter demanding extensive voter data from Vermont, including personal information. He points out that Bondi's own voting rights chief justified it by claiming elections were being taken over by the left. Welch asks a simple question: what evidence supports that claim? But once again, no direct answer, only vague statements about fair and free elections, never addressing the substance of the inquiry. Welch pushes back because this isn't about broad principles, it's about the DOJ using its power to launch investigations based on rhetoric instead of facts. If the federal government is reaching into all 50 states, including those with Republican governors, shouldn't the Attorney General be able to explain why? He even acknowledges her background as a prosecutor, reminding her that investigations are supposed to be grounded in evidence, not speculation. But she refuses to engage directly. Then came the contradiction. Bondi says she can't answer questions due to pending litigation, yet she had just discussed another pending case when responding to Senator Cruz. Welch isn't trying to trap her, he's pointing out a standard that needs to be applied consistently. If pending litigation prevents answers, it should prevent all answers. If it doesn't, then why avoid his questions? But again, she sidesteps it. And things escalate when Welch asks about a $50,000 transfer involving Tom Homan. He asks a basic factual question: does video evidence exist? Bondi says she doesn't know. Welch presses because how can the Attorney General not know whether there is video evidence in a matter involving federal agencies? Instead of clarifying, she snaps back, accusing Welch of calling her a liar, even though he never said that. He simply pointed out that she has spoken publicly about the issue before. This exchange becomes the perfect example of Welch's larger point. This isn't about party or ideology, it's about whether America's chief law enforcement officer can answer questions without turning them into personal fights. Oversight is supposed to be about truth, facts, and accountability, not evasions and emotional reactions. Welch is doing what oversight is designed to do: ask direct questions, demand evidence, and challenge inconsistencies. And the larger message for viewers is powerful. It's not enough for leaders to hold power, they must respect it. They must defend their decisions with facts, not slogans. They must face difficult questions, not hide behind procedural shields. And above all, they must recognize the human stakes: families staring down impossible medical bills, voters whose private information is being requested, communities depending on the DOJ to act without political bias. If you believe accountability matters, if you believe truth shouldn't depend on who's in the room, keep watching, keep speaking up, and keep demanding honesty from those who have the power to shape your life. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dive political analysis, and drop a comment telling me what moment in this exchange stood out to you the most. Your voice truly matters here.